we are going. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Hello. We are looking at today, it says half an hour, but we should be about 15 minutes unless you have any additional questions. And today we are assessing eating behaviors and habits. We're looking from a brain side of things to begin with here. So our main purpose of this session is to improve the autonomy you have over food you consume. And we'll do this by self-reflection. We'll go into detail and figure out and understand what causes you to consume the foods that you do. Some of your habits and behaviors will be supporting your progress, whilst others may hinder. So again, Ella, you're going to be very familiar with this in thoughts and so on and so forth. So we'll be covering eating environment, sensory cues, influence of other people, and emotional triggers. So homework recap. How did you get on with your food diary? What did you notice? If you did notice anything, was it as expected? Are you now aware of behaviors you didn't realize you had? Did you snack more than you thought you did? Did you drink more calories than you realized? And awareness and taking accountability of your routine and eating behaviors is really important. So then we can begin to adapt and improve them to suit you better and align with your kind of lifestyle and ongoing goals. So, Ella, if you're happy to share, I know you're in a public space, you might not be happy to share. Did you have a look at the video from last week?
I tried to, and I couldn't get into it. I tried to have a look at it yesterday, and I couldn't. Yeah, it was coming up. The latest video that I could see was on was from like 8 weeks ago or something, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll be honest, the homework I have not done.
No problem. No problem at all. We might have to do this back to front.
Session one was essentially establishing what foods you're consuming, why they're beneficial, and mentioning about energy balance, so calorie expenditure versus calorie consumption. And what the effects of those are. So I shall ping that over to you again, and then let me know if it works. It should do.
I obviously did that session with you.
Yes,
didn't I? So
yes.
I've got. Is it similar to that?
Yeah, you'll be familiar. Yeah.
Cool.
I forgot we did that actually.
Yeah, you guys did that together, didn't you? Cool. Hold on a second. Cool. Environment we eat. So again, looking at the environment we eat, it's heavily researched that we know the environments affect eating behaviors enormously. So one of the oldest studies was by Pavlov. Again, you're going to be very familiar with this, and his dog. The only contact he had with the dog when he gave him his meal, and then he noticed that every time the dog saw Pavlov, the dog started to drool. And then Pavlov took that further and began ringing the bell when feeding the dogs. And then he noticed that the dogs would drool by the sound of the bell. Again, it's operant conditioning, so you'll be very familiar with this. So again, it's being aware and developing the mindfulness around some of the environmental cues that we have then also make us feel hungry. So if you're it doesn't matter, but whatever fast food chain you like, often if you smell the fast food chain, you're like, oh, I'm a bit peckish now. Or if you go into
M&S and they're baking everything, you walk in the front door and you can just smell the cookies and the fresh bread.
And you're like, oh, I'm hungry, even if you weren't hungry or you were full beforehand. So it's about knowing that those are automatic or habitual. So it's important becoming aware of our environment and our eating cues. Lots of them are automatic or habitual. So a bit like some people have a drink after they finish work at 5 o'clock. And again, it's a habitual habit. So becoming aware of the personal cues to eat specifically for you will help you become more conscious and eat mindfully. So food companies purposely create that perfect blend of salts, fats and sugars and the right textures and smells. And the visual look to be most appealing for our caveman or our reptilian brains. And let's not forget that that's their business, and they're more likely to sell and make higher profits. So a bit like dairy milk is really designed to be moreish, rather than if you have a dark chocolate, you're less likely to eat or overconsume the chocolate just because of the way it's designed.
And this is a relatively recent thing in the last 100 years or so that humans have been exposed to. It's this creation of food. So foods have evolved from becoming a single ingredient style food to then becoming a 5, 10, 20, 30 ingredient food. Now, through the degree of processing, you can manipulate how a food tastes, the texture of it, how it smells, etc. And it's lots of the things we're doing is just building awareness about what we're doing. Processed foods are this. They're not the enemy, first of all, because they taste great. And we're all about 80-20. So building a healthier lifestyle, not necessarily being an extremist, but this perfect recipe of salts, fats, and sugars to make this amazing taste. And we can actually manipulate the foods that you do consume, which are more nutritious, to make them tastier, such as adding a little bit of salt or adding a little bit of sugar into, let's just say, like boiled greens. You think, okay, if you add a little bit of sweet chili in there, a little bit of salt in there, you can all of a sudden turn very bland food into something which is a little bit more appealing.
Which is helpful if we're
trying to increase the amount of single ingredient plant-based foods, for example. But it's just something to be aware of when we're consuming ultra-processed foods.
So looking at social context, human culture was designed to, while socializing. So we see that across all cultures. Our culture just happens to be particularly unhealthy and often binge on things in excess, for example, cakes and things like that. So even if it's not in excess, the food we consume are calorie dense and provide little benefit to you. If you think about a birthday cake, in the sense of it's a quite high in calories, but not nutritionally dense. If you look at the way that, again, European culture is, and the fact the Italians or the French or the Spanish, they eat over long periods of time. There are multiple courses, but again, there's vegetables and fruit and fish and oil and very
much more balanced diet.
Much more balanced. There's still cheese, there's still bread, but it's looking at kind of how, again, our cultural influences are kind of
established,
yeah, for sure. And the same thing in the UK, we generally don't bring in, I don't know, a fruit platter for our birthdays. We generally bring in cake or
Colin the Caterpillar.
Yeah, or a Colin the Caterpillar. So again, it's looking at that. And the same thing. So again, as we move over, we have peer pressure. So if you have a pushy grandma or a bad influence best friend. So again, it's looking at that. When we're navigating that, especially if we're looking at weight reduction is one of the goals. And if that's one of your goals, it's also around protecting your yeses. So only say yes to something that's a fuck yes, rather than, and if you really, really want it. So if there's a slice of cake, cool. And you're choosing, like, I really want that slice of cake, amazing. But are you appeasing or are you avoiding conflict? Especially, I feel as well, there's an influence if you say, oh, have this aspiration or this goal, sometimes people will try and then sabotage you slightly, or they'll be like, oh no, like, why are you trying to do that? Or, you know, and sometimes there's not always
you'll be fine, like, it's not going to kill you.
Yeah, there's people that are don't always have your kind of one's best interest at heart. So that's important to think about. And again, becoming more confident with your choices, even if you've been on a diet 12 times and this year, but to no avail, it's being confident when saying no, and there's no shame in saying no and sticking up for yourself. So again, that's around confidence and learning about, again, being like, I'm doing this for me. And again, we're talking about autonomy. So I think it's very easy. This especially applies with alcohol as well. I think if you've got quite boozy friends, this can also have an impact on kind of, if you're like, oh, I'm just going to have 2, and then someone's like, oh, no, have more, it won't hurt you. But then actually they're not in your head or your mind the following day when your training's impacted, or you can't get out of bed, or sleep
impacted,
disrupted,
then follow up food choices.
So it's just being mindful of that. And again, we're all about increasing self-confidence and self-esteem and self-trust. So sometimes that's not easy to do within the context of peer pressure and friends. So, and particular people. So people
will jump in here real quick. One thing that you have said in the past, which is really helpful, when you're protecting your yeses, if you just have a straight up, no, I'm all right, I'm not going to have that, because it's such a blunt response, you often get a lot of pushback. And it's like, no, do it. Like, you should. It's nice. Like, live a little, blah, blah, blah. Like, all of these things. You've said before, if you go in with a specific reason, such as like cake, for example, I'll eat the cake. If you go in and say, oh, no, that cake doesn't actually sit very well with me. And like you can make up a white lie and say, no, it's got a little bit too much dairy, or I'm a little bit lactose intolerant, whatever. And you can make up this white lie, which really eliminates any further peer pressure.
Yeah.
Which is actually a really handy thing to do. So if you can make up a white lie about the reason why you can't do it, rather than just no, you're backing up with a reason. You sort of can't argue it, because it's not like the person's not going to say, well, I'll take the lactose. And it's like, you can't. Like, that doesn't agree with me, so I'm not going to do it.
Or I've had I've had loads of dairy the last week and my tummy's not feeling particularly good. That kind of thing.
You can make up a bit of a white lie.
It's just, again, protecting yourself. If you don't feel confident enough to be like, no, thank you, that's fine. I'm not going to have that, because, as you say, people generally push back. And then, particular people. So I was kind of covered that in the other one about like particular people will be more supportive or not as supportive as others. So like, you don't need to lose any more weight, or you're too thin. And again, all of a sudden people have got kind of an opinion on your body type and whether or not those goals are aligned with them.
And it's their opinion. They're projecting that onto someone else, which is like, no, this isn't about you. Thanks very much.
So it's important to remember that. And again, emotions. So it's really important to be mindful and aware of comfort eating. We have angry eating and we have boredom eating. So again, understanding that why we comfort eat. So again, when we were soothed, going way back, when we were often soothed with breast milk or some kind of, again, that's often how they soothe babies. So often we reach when we're unsettled within self for something that's sweet or smooth or really tasty or warm, and it kind of really goes right back to that very early onset of how we would cope with feelings, or how we were, again, not rewarded, but how we were comforted in a moment. And then often what happens is we don't grow out of that as grown-ups, and we need to sort of really slowly adapt and adjust our thinking around that, and actually begin to understand that what is that, why are we eating that, kind of the other. Then if you flip the spectrum even further into kind of distorted eating and binge eating, often any of the emotional eating is around wanting to not feel the feelings coming up. So either people will binge eat and push it down, so they're not wanting the undesirable feelings to come up, or you have people that, again, are not wanting to feel any further. So it's either a feeling of feeling too full is actually easier to tie their thoughts and their feelings around a feeling of feeling full and uncomfortable, rather than actually expressing the feelings that are in there before they come up. And then you've got various other feelings in there. So you've got purging, and all of those are, again, around distorted eating and how that's multifaceted. Ella, you'll know about that. And it needs the brain side and the dietitian and the psychoeducation side around the why behind their eating and what the patterns are with that. Angry eating, we generally go for crunchy food because we're angry and we're trying to, again, get something out. If you notice, people will eat it's quite gender specific. Men will eat crunchy things when they're angry and annoyed.
Crisp biscuits, crackers.
Crisp biscuits, crackers. Yeah. Boredom eating, so the same thing. If we're at work, we might go and open the fridge 57 times, hoping there's something different in there just to kind of break up the day. Again, it is just our brains are looking for something, a bit of a dopamine hit, and we're looking for around the house to see what else there is to kind of interact with. So it's, again, about understanding and building awareness around, am I doing any of these things, and are they moving me away from my future self and my future goals? So it's just, again, none of these things, as long as they don't tip into kind of distorted eating habits, eating patterns, some of these things are just things to notice, and just be aware of, oh, that's maybe something I do, or I'm predisposed to comfort eating, or I'm predisposed to something like this. And then it's looking at whether that needs a little bit more support and help and structure in there. Sleep and stress. So when we're sleep deprived, this will disrupt many hormones, including our appetite and our hunger cues. Stress can also impact our hormones, causing us to make different decisions to normal. And again, often when we're tired, we're looking for that kind of big spike of carbs and sugar really quickly.
Again, a dopamine fix. So with sleep, lack of sleep has a whole host of negative effects on the entire body, but specifically related to your appetite. You have two major hunger hormones or appetite hormones. You have leptin and you have ghrelin. Ghrelin is the signal that increases hunger and the drive to eat, and then leptin is the one that it goes from your stomach to your brain to tell your brain that you have had enough. So when you are sleep deprived, ghrelin increases, so you get hungrier, and then leptin decreases so that it takes more to be full. So you're extra hungry, and it takes longer to be full. So it's a very easy way to drive up calorie consumption in that day.
So a bit like if we're hungover or we've been out and then the night before, and then the following day you're tired, and then you also go for it's a cycle of high carbs, pizza, Domino's, or McDonald's or something like that, because the body is like, I need more food, and that's
extra hungry, become essentially a bottomless pit,
which is a very normal response.
And with nights out drinking, hangovers, but late nights out even without drinking, it's not so much the impact you had in that day, it's the follow-up effect of the next day that is more damaging or unhelpful.
So yes, just to be mindful of that. And then what about holidays? So when we're more relaxed, less stress, warmer, and generally enjoying life a little bit more, we eat less. Our food choices change too. So they become more fresh products and more nutrient-rich foods and less calorie-dense food. So again, when you're on holiday, generally people crave a lot more salads. Salads taste different in the sun. I think generally we crave a lot more savory, because if we're hot and we're sweating a little bit more, generally the body signals, okay, I need some more salt. So we're generally again more aligned to eating salads and vegetables and fruits. And
different foods have different water content as well. So a driver of dehydration is actually an increase in appetite. So you might often crave more fruits because they have a lot more water in them to help hydrate you. It's interesting also again, the environment of holiday, particularly if it's a all-inclusive or a buffet setting, where you don't have to put any effort into thinking, preparing and consuming. What you just have to do the consuming part, but thinking and preparing about your food choices. So taken away all of the effort, you might find that you consume much more nutritious foods, which might be a little bit more of an effort to cook at home. So it's just something interesting to think about. If your stresses came down, would food choices change?
Mm-hmm. So the summary, it's clear how our food choices and behaviours around food can be impacted by a particular environment, some people, or social situations and emotions. It's really important to become aware of how you change around these different triggers. And by building awareness, you can then preempt the situations and prepare yourself or ourselves. So example, boredom eating, reduce high calorie food content within the house, creating barriers out of reach or the back of the cupboard. Smelling freshly baked goods, eating prior or taking a different route down the aisles, that's always helpful. Peer pressure, get used to saying no and pre-planning what you'll be eating or drinking. So the homework is to self-reflect whilst eating or being tempted to eat. What are you craving? Why are you craving it? Is there a pattern? And how will you manage these feelings?